I've been reflecting a great deal on something that I don't really talk all that much about as a 2E educator and executive function coach. My own personal struggles with ADHD and anxiety, and understanding the comorbidities between those two, the interconnectedness. When I look back to my childhood, I am constantly reminded of my early inabilities to read, my struggles. God bless my mom. She would always read to me so that I could get my homework done and then I could develop my imagination and appreciate stories. All my report cards would always say, Sam can't stay still, he can't sit in his seat. And I remember very clearly everything taking so much longer than it should, looking around the classroom, kind of scanning because it was easier for me to read people than read a book. And I would see that everyone was finishing before me. Or when I was home, I would have less playtime than my friends because the smaller assignments would take a lot longer or require me to go to a phonics tutor to get help and things like that. Additionally, understanding those comorbidities with ADHD, like anxiety. My whole life, still to this day, I am often crippled with analysis paralysis. And one of the main reasons that I've gotten into the field that I'm in is because of my own personal struggles, my own reflections, and my desire to help others so that they don't have to face the same adversity that I did. Now, qualifying this, I had the best support team growing up, and I am insanely lucky and grateful and privileged to be where I am today because not everyone is able to be so successful. I'd like to share now with you 5 tips that I have really kind of reflected a great deal on, look back on my own personal life, and wish I had known when I was younger. So the first tip is, whether you're a student or a parent, it's reflect on your strengths. Okay? A lot of the times ADHDers have short attention spans and they have a lot of negative reinforcement. So I would always recall feeling really, really bad about my ability or inability, so I thought, to read. The trouble with that was that I never was able to see my victories and my strengths. Years ago, my dad told me this story about picking me up at kindergarten on the first week, and the teacher, Mrs. Allen, one of my favorite teachers of all time, would say, I found out already in the first week that if I want to get the whole class to clean up, I just need to convince Sam, and he convinces others. So I had natural, charm and interpersonal skills. However, I was so caught up in what I couldn't do, I don't know that I focused enough or appreciated those skills enough. So focus on what you do well or what your students do well and encourage the development and the honing of those skills. The second tip that I'd like to share is advocacy. After you have identified clear strengths, encourage your student or yourself to advocate. Reach out to the teachers, to the administration at their current school, and figure out how they can leverage their strengths. How can they do what they do well, perhaps in place of what they're being asked to do, right? If a student struggles to write, but they can do what I'm doing right now and put together a short video, ask if the teacher will accept the video in replacement for a writing exercise. You'd be surprised how many teachers are open to that kind of differentiation. Little bonus tip here, if you're meeting resistance with your teachers, I would encourage you to ask why the assignment exists. What are the key objectives? And if you look at the language behind the objectives, you might be able to find some wiggle room where perhaps the product or process can be differentiated so that the student can access the curriculum and achieve. Tip number 3, understanding the comorbidities of ADHD. It's been said that around 50% of adults who have ADHD also have anxiety disorder. And around 30% of adults who have ADHD also have depression. These 2 mood disorders, as they're characterized, are often comorbidities, meaning that they're also found present in adults and youth who have attention deficit hyperactive disorder. We don't spend a ton of time talking about this, but it's important to educate ourselves and our students that ADHD, having an intense focus or a hyper focus in an area of interest or even an obsession, and then a lack of focus almost everywhere else, can cause a massive chasm to grow ever wider which can be filled with feelings of inadequacy, depression, frustration, regret, right? Anyone that's ever really hyper-focused on something and the rest of their lives have kind of fallen apart a little bit during that phase has probably experienced this feeling. So it's important that we help our students and ourselves understand that this is actually normal. It's a part of our diagnoses, and that we are not alone, we are not broken. It's simply just a part of who we are, and it's something that we need to understand. Another little bonus tip here, if you have a student with ADHD or you yourself have ADHD, it is really helpful, I speak from experience here, to have a great therapist that understands ADHD and how it affects your own day-to-day life.